nation, there has been increasing humanitarian concern caused by the deepening Anglophone crisis. The UN says there are over 256,000 people who have been internally displaced, going by statistics got by mid-May of 2018. The United Nations, out of all of this, deployed UN agencies or humanitarian assistance to come to the Northwest and Southwest region to seek ways of giving assistance to those who have been internally displaced. But the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa published another statistics this December indicating that there are well over 276,904 persons who have been displaced in the Northwest alone. The figures even higher in the Southwest region, where we have some 276,844 who have been displaced in the Southwest. Put all of this together, it shows a situation of bleak and very, very gloomy future, as the crisis is nowhere close to ending. Now, what are local NGOs doing to assist those who have been victim to the crisis? On today's edition of the program, we have one of those NGOs who have been ensuring that those who have been internally displaced have something like benefit, have something like assistance to keep them running, while a global or a generalized assistance would come in the future. We have Mr. AKOH Baudouin. He is the director of the Global Forum for the Defense of the Less Privileged. He shall be telling us more on the humanitarian crisis rocking the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Thanks for joining us, Mr. AKOH.
It's my pleasure, Mr. Yanick.
Yes, we're talking about the humanitarian crisis in Cameroon, with special focus on the Northwest and Southwest region. First of all, what is humanitarian crisis?
Mr. Yanick, it's my pleasure to be here today to address the plight of our people. A humanitarian crisis is a singular event or a series of events that threatens the well-being of a people. With respect to the Northwest and Southwest regions, we can see that the health of the public, the health of the people is being threatened. There are a lot of issues that are being threatened. You have issues of shelter needs, you have issues of hygiene and sanitation, and also the water supply, which are also a very big threat for the IDPs. And it's a host of other issues that IDPs are currently experiencing at the level of the bushes, and also those who have been displaced to urban areas. They are also having a lot of issues. So we are going to discuss on what these people are going through in the field.
Yes, there is this conflicting report, statistics I want to say, between NGOs, especially the local NGOs and the international NGOs, on the real data of the number of Anglophones, I want to say citizens of the Northwest and Southwest regions who have been hit by the humanitarian crisis. We're talking about internally displaced persons. Now, your NGO has been doing a lot of groundwork in terms of collection of data and also processing data and all of this. What's the situation on the ground? Can you give us some realistic statistics on the number of internally displaced persons in the Northwest and the Southwest region?
Mr. Yanick, the situation is really bad across both regions. At first, the United Nations estimated had an estimate that is far below what we are seeing on the field. At the level of the Northwest region, right now, the situation has escalated. You have more IDPs compared to the start of the crisis. From the United Nations statistics, OCHA, to be specific, that is the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, they gave a statistics published recently that combining for both regions, that is the Northwest and Southwest regions, we have about 256 persons that have been thousands persons that have been internally displaced. But they also stated that it's difficult for them to have a real statistics at the level of the Northwest region with respect to persons who have been displaced. But we should also look at the data that was published by the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, CHEDA, which states that, as you quoted at the beginning of the program, that there are 274,908 persons who are internally displaced at the level of the Northwest regions, and 278,867 who have been displaced at the level of the Southwest region. So if you want to look at the statistics from the UN, from OCHA, and also that published by CHEDA, you realize that there is a very big difference, which means that the real situation on the ground as far as IDPs, the displacement of IDPs is concerned, is not known. So we have to keep making efforts, because without real data, it will be very difficult for humanitarian actors, donors, and other partner agencies to come on the ground and address the plight of our people who are going through a very difficult moment as far as the crisis is concerned.
Okay, now you've done a lot of work with regards to getting information on the IDP situation in the Northwest and Southwest region. Can you briefly tell us what causes people to leave their place of origin? Can you just give a general picture on some of the causes of this displacement of people that gives birth to the humanitarian crisis that the UN has termed the crisis in the Northwest and Northwest and Southwest region to be?
Mr. Yanick, as we all know, there is fighting going on between the state actors and the non-state actors, and this fighting has led to crippling of businesses. It makes it very difficult for the people to survive, and this financial constraint, this economic constraints on a lot of families has been one of the major reasons for displacement. You also have the issue of insecurity. If you live in a neighborhood whereby every day there are gunshots, you know what I'm saying. You know, it becomes very difficult mentally. You know, there are a lot of people suffering from psychosocial challenges, most especially kids. A lot of families are moving from, you know, one area where is the original settlement to other areas, because, you know, they want their kids to go back to school, which is a major issue at the moment. A lot of kids, even here in Boya, you have just a couple of areas whereby kids can go to school, and it makes it very difficult. What's the future of these kids? It makes it very difficult for a lot of parents. Sometimes when, you know, you go around Boya and you realize that a lot of kids are not going to school, you start asking yourself a lot of questions. You know, a lot of them have gone into drugs. A lot of them are joining, you know, groups, you know, peer pressure. They are joining, doing a lot of nasty things around. So you have a lot of pressure on the parents, you know, and those pressures keep, you know, encouraging displacements from one place to the other. And right now there are areas that are called safe zones, you know, but we cannot declare that there is any safe zone, because an area can be safe today, before you know it, tomorrow, you know, there is a form of displacement due to one issue or the other. So there are a lot of factors that are responsible for the constant displacement, most especially the issue of insecurity, which is at the top of ongoing displacements at the level of the Northwest and Southwest regions.
Right. Now, what are some of the urgent humanitarian plights that are faced, that IDPs do face? What are some of those urgent humanitarian issues? You attempted naming some of them, like the health concerns and all of that, but give us the urgent ones. Let's start from there. That the common citizen of the Northwest or Southwest region faces at the moment. What are some of those urgent ones that are consistent in the two regions?
Mr. Yanick, we have the issue of health. We cannot speak about other issues without bringing in the issue of health. Health is, I think, fundamental. A lot of people, especially patients who are sick of like HIV patients, they find it very difficult to get their drugs. You also have a lot of people who are dying at the level of the bushes, especially the vulnerable, like persons living with disabilities, because of lack of access to basic healthcare services. Just at the level of FACO, it's difficult. The number of healthcare, the number of health centers that are functional, are very few. So it makes it very difficult. If we look at the situation of FACO, what about places like Moyoka, Ekona, and other areas, Ikata, a lot of places whereby you had health units that used to attend to the needs of the people, but most of them are not functional. So I think health is one of the areas that we have to look at, even though, sometimes some agencies are looking at issues of food, they are looking at issues of shelter, but I think health is one of the fundamental issues that is affecting IDPs at the level of the Northwest and Southwest regions. If we want to come closer to health, we can also look at the issue of shelter. A lot of people are not having the means to pay their rents. A lot of those who have been displaced, especially those who are living in the urban areas, they find it very difficult to sustain themselves. So shelter is a major issue at the urban areas, while also in the bushes, there is also an issue of shelter, especially when the weather is not the best. So there are shelter needs, health needs, and also we have issues of water supply, hygiene and sanitation, which is also a major issue for us to look at when it comes to the humanitarian response. And it all goes in line with when we speak about the Sphere project, which identifies issues of water supply, issues of health, issues of shelter. You also have issues of hygiene and sanitation. So those are core areas when it comes to every humanitarian intervention, which is outlined by the Sphere project. So I think that is a similar situation that we are experiencing at the level of the region. I want to remind the public that the crisis across the Northwest and Southwest region is a complex humanitarian emergency, which means that there is no fixed strategy to solve the problems that our people are going through. Strategies are being developed day in, day out, but I think in order for us to have a coherent strategy, we need to have data which is trustworthy, both for the partners and also for the local community.
All right. Now, to give you a very vivid picture on how the internally displaced persons in the Northwest and Southwest region live the daily realities of what is going on, we capture the sounds and colors through the explanations given by some of the IDPs in a report that you shall be watching. And certainly we did that report in collaboration with the Global Forum for the Defense of the Less Privileged, whose CEO we have present here. We want to show you exactly how kids, mothers, fathers, elderly do suffer on daily basis due to the Anglophone crisis. Let's take a watch on this report. We shall be back to continue.
This is 7-year-old Ishmael, once a final year pupil of a primary school in Mamu, a village in the outskirts of Buea, capital of the Southwest region. He now lives as an orphan with a good Samaritan who found him stranded after soldiers razed their house, displacing everyone in the village.
My mother abandoned me, my father abandoned me. My grandmother come and take me and take care of me. They burned all of our house. I was sad and angry. So we went to the farm to look something to eat. We went to the farm. There are many people in the farm. We brought the bread. We shared it to all of the farm. My grandfather goes into the house to go and look to the house, take some water. So she made all our things are burned. All documents are burned. My school bag, my school shoe, all my things, my uniform are burned. I'm angry and sad.
Like Ishmael, these women and children are all victims of the deepening crisis rocking the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. They all had their houses burned down, hence causing them to seek refuge elsewhere.
So we did 13 hours for inside house. Around 2:30 for night, here gone. The holla, only for where I come from. Yes. As that gone the holla, we sleep for down. They continue shoot, they shoot about 7 guns. Then they start go. Then for morning time, we woke up. We look place, that military, they don't come again, 3 motor. They pass go the sofa. They will fear. So we will come out, go meet up them for bush. We tell them, say, gone. So we no sleep. They say that they be here, they gone. So now we should down for both. The small bread will be whole. We begin divide them for this picking there. So now after they call, say, the house don't burn.
If we were inside the house, we could have burned all of us. They burned even my school bag, my uniform and my pens, my pen and my uniform and my shoes. And my auntie baby things that I bought.
This one you see once accommodating over 28 persons. He too saw his house burned down recently. Separatist forces suspected him of aligning his activities to the government of Cameroon, and so came overnight and burned down his house as well as his office.
All started on Saturday the 6th of October 2018 when we had a workshop at the National Commission on Human Rights and Freedom to drill us on how we are going to observe the 2018 presidential election. So at that time, we had a group picture, a group photograph outside our office. So it seemed as if some people were passing and seeing us snapping that picture. They took the message back to the village that they saw me in Elekam office collecting 150,000 francs to go out for campaign for the Cameroon People Democratic Movement. So on Sunday, which was the 7th of October 2018, all of us were in the bush as usual due to the massive shooting between the military and the what's called amber fighters. So it was about 8 a.m. that I received a phone call from my nearest neighbor that my house is on flame, and they asked me not to come beside it because it seems as if they are after me. So I sent some people to go and see actually what is happening. So when they came back, they told me that the entire house is down. And before the flaming of my house, I was harboring some 13 internal displaced people from Mamu communities, including pregnant women. So now that the house is burned and all the property is burned, their own properties too are burned, that is why we are outside now begging the national and international community for assistance.
He, however, denies allegations levied against him and blames it on detractors.
I'm very, very innocent about the allegations leveled against me that I went and collected 150,000 francs from the Cameroon People Democratic Movement for campaign. I am very, very innocent. I don't think as a human rights activist I can do that. Yes, automatically my organization is a political organization. I don't do politics as far as my organization is concerned. So what is leveled against me as the allegations is all faulty.
There are over 28 or more persons seeking for refuge in this house, but they don't know what the future holds for them.
Life is not really easy. As from that Sunday, the 7th of October till date, you yourself, I think you have seen the population. Only evacuating the population was not easy. We have to leave the soccer by 8 in the night so that we should move by bush as they were after us, so that people should not see us. So life is not very, very easy. The most essential thing for now is feeding. Water, buy water. So we always buy water. Daily we can buy water for about 3,000 francs, depending on the number of people you see. Then feeding, then clothing. Just as they want to see dried outside, is gesture from people that they have been given since we came here, and other people have still promised. Other people have promised to bring us some other assistance here. So we are still pleading to people of goodwill.
They say they live in constant fear and trauma amid further victimization from the warring factions of the restive crisis. And that is how the story goes across the 2 English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Many have had to run away from their area of residence due to the fierce battle between pro-independence fighters and government forces. Meanwhile, the Global Forum for the Defense of the Less Privileged, a civil society organization based in Buea, has been making tireless efforts to provide basic necessities for the displaced persons.
We are here to carry out a needs assessment of this family that has been internally displaced. Their homes have been burnt, and here we have 2 pregnant women. We also have a lot of kids, and we also have the elderly, who are the most hit as a result of the humanitarian crisis in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. So after the need assessment, we are going to come back with our staff to provide the basic necessities for the women, most especially who are pregnant, and one of them is 7 months pregnant, the other one is 8.5 months pregnant. So we are also looking forward to seeing that they put to bed safely. They have support through our Right to Health program, which entails bringing some of the doctors to carry out checkups for free, and also to ensure that the babies that are forthcoming, we can also get some of the materials necessary to take care of the kids.
Going by statistics provided by the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa, the conflict in the Cameroon's 2 English-speaking regions have led to the displacement of well over 500 persons, while over 4,000 deaths have been recorded so far since 2016.
All right. Certainly, you now have a clearer picture on the humanitarian concerns in the northwest and southwest region. That was just a microcosm of the macrocosm of the situation we have in the 2 regions. Now, on the 20th, Wednesday, the 20th of June, 2018, the government of Cameroon launched the Emergency Humanitarian Assistance Plan on the deepening crisis in the northwest and southwest region, zooming straight on the internally displaced persons. The government announced that with 12.7 billion francs CFA, it will be able to cater for some over 300,000 internally displaced persons identified in the northwest and southwest region. The government said for 18 months, that is between 2018 and 2019, it would be able to take care of the humanitarian concerns. 6 months later, has the government been able to achieve anything? Of course, we have seen the government, through different collaborators of the government, deployed to the field to give assistance to some identified internally displaced persons in the west, in the littoral, in the southwest, and in the northwest regions. Has the government been able to meet the concerns of this global figure that we're talking about? Now, we want to find out from you, Mr. AKOH Baudouin, what do you make of this government's emergency humanitarian assistance plan?
Yes, Mr. Yanick, looking at the government emergency humanitarian plan, before coming to that, I think we need to look at the principles, the humanitarian principles. The principles of impartiality, the principle of humanity, the principle of neutrality, and also the principle of independence. Those principles are very important when it comes to humanitarian interventions. The government has set forward a plan to address the humanitarian crisis at the level of the regions. But I also think the government needs to look into the principle of humanity. The principle of humanity states that it's the responsibility of the government or the international community or whosoever is engaged in humanitarian action to cater for the needs of the people. Every government has a right to cater for the needs of its people. But for a government to cater for the needs of its people, it needs to have proper coordination. It's not just for a government to come up with a humanitarian response plan without proper coordination. So I think it's a good step in the right direction, but there is also need for proper coordination. And if the government of Cameroon thinks that the people of the northwest and southwest regions are part and parcel Cameroonians, then they need to set up a proper coordination mechanism. Like what they have done, I think it's also a good step. But
when you say proper coordination, what does the government do that is wrong? I want you to outline it.
The government has set forward a coordination committee. As humanitarian actors on the field, what we are still watching is to see how this committee is going to move on with its strategic objectives. At the moment, I can't really speak on behalf of the committee because I've not seen what the committee has been doing. But we look forward to see what the committee can do at the level of the Northwest and Southwest regions. But when it comes to the principle of neutrality, I think as a humanitarian, I'm not going to comment on the political climate and what the government is supposed to put into place, because I need to be independent. You know, I need to be independent as a humanitarian actor when it comes to the delivery of humanitarian aid to the public. So I think it's up to the government to, I'll just give a point of an advice for the government to ensure that the team that it has put forward should be made up of men who have passion for their people. Men who will be there to ensure that the public receives humanitarian assistance without any bias. And a team that will be also there to ensure that there is proper protection of data, protection of those that they want to cater for. Because the issue of protection is at the forefront of this humanitarian crisis across the Northwest and Southwest regions. A lot of people, they find it very difficult to identify themselves as IDPs because some of the IDPs have been targeted. So if the government takes into consideration the protection of civilians in the delivery of humanitarian assistance, that is something really vital, you know, that we are calling forward to as humanitarian actors. You know, but at the same time, we decide to stay independent. We decide to be autonomous in our activities and to avoid any political, economic, or sometimes cultural differences when it comes to the delivery of humanitarian aid, because that is at the center of every humanitarian intervention.
Right. Now, in October 2018, that is shortly after the infamous October 1 day that was marked by what we call curfew. There was dusk to dawn curfew in the two regions, and then subsequently we had the October 7 elections. We started seeing the influx of the United Nations, that's the United Nations Agencies for Humanitarian Assistance in the Southwest region. Of course, we understand that they have come in their numbers. We have the World Food Program, we have the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, that's OCHA that we've been talking about. We also have the International Organization for Migration, and we also have the United Nations Emergency Children, the Children Emergency Fund, the UNICEF, and a host of others. They have all come to the Southwest region. We don't know about the Northwest region because it appears they are well coordinated here in the Southwest region. What do you make of their intervention so far? Because we see they're already donating gifts, they're already giving assistance to the IDPs and all of that. What do you make of this intervention by the United Nations? Is it timely and is it working well? Is it targeting the right people?
Mr. Yanick, a lot of people are frustrated with what the United Nations has been doing on the field because it has taken so much time. At the beginning of this crisis, a lot of people were excited that the United Nations is coming to relieve them from their difficulties, but it has been really slow. It has been really slow because of the need for proper data at the level of both regions. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, the crisis across the Northwest and Southwest regions is a complex humanitarian emergency, which means that there are so many actors. And because there are so many actors, it makes it very difficult for data to be gathered on the field. So what the United Nations bodies have been doing is to work with both the local partners, local organizations, as well as the international non-governmental organizations to have proper data in the areas of health, in the areas of shelter, in the areas of and water, hygiene and sanitation, and a host of other areas whereby the people are being affected. So I think we have to stay positive. We have to give the United Nations some time. I think 2019, the United Nations is, I'm not speaking on behalf of the United Nations, but from a series of meetings, I think the people need to be very positive. That something will be done to address their situations at the level of the Northwest and Southwest regions.
Right, now, I want us to talk about this committee created by government to coordinate the activities of humanitarian assistance in Africa. Certainly it was done in November through a presidential decree assigning the Prime Minister and head of government to coordinate activities in the Northwest and Southwest region when it comes to humanitarian assistance. Now, this committee is supposed to overlook any humanitarian NGO, be it international or national, that is carrying out humanitarian activity in the Northern and Southwest region, and give them possible guidelines so that, according to government, they will be able to ensure their security, but also would also be able to ensure that whatever is being dispatched for who is given at the right time. Do you think it was called for the government to coordinate, especially the United Nations activity, when you've called the 4 principles? Doesn't it go against the principle to have some form of a general overseer to cater for the dispatchment of humanitarian assistance? Don't you see it fishy, or what do you have to make about it generally?
Yeah, Mr. Yanick, as a humanitarian organization or as the United Nations, is supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be autonomous in the execution of humanitarian assistance to those in need, be it in Cameroon, be it in South Sudan, be it in Yemen. The United Nations organization is supposed to be autonomous, as well as a lot of other international non-governmental organizations that work on humanitarian issues. But at the level of the current crisis in the Northwest and Southwest regions, we have the government of Cameroon monitoring the activities of the United Nations, trying to see how they can work in the coordination of the activities of the United Nations, and also that of international non-governmental organizations. Like at the moment, all international non-governmental organizations, they have to get an authorization from the SDO in order to go on the field, to intervene at the level of the division, or at the level of the subdivision. Yes, so that is what is ongoing. A lot of them are not having access to a lot of areas because they have not yet had an authorization from the SDO of that division. So that is what is happening. And at the level of the United Nations meetings with the government, they are still having high level meetings to see how this issue can be addressed. Because what we are talking about is the health, the well-being of the people, the Cameroonian people. So we should do something we should keep politics aside. Politics is not part of humanitarian intervention. The protection of the civilians is vital when it comes to humanitarian aid. Those who are dying in the bushes are Cameroonians. Those who are dying in, because they don't have food to eat or they don't have proper shelter, I think they are human beings. First and foremost, they are human beings. Before they are Cameroonians, they are first and foremost human beings. We need to treat them as human beings. If we take this approach of humanity when it comes to the delivery of humanitarian aid, I think there will be a mutual understanding between the government of Cameroon, the United Nations agencies, and other international humanitarian organizations that are on the field, as well as local organizations that are doing a great job when it comes to the issue of access, because international organizations cannot have access without the assistance of local humanitarian organizations. And that is one of the issues, one of the major points that we have been emphasizing to the United Nations bodies, the issue of engaging local partners in the humanitarian intervention across the Northwest and Southwest regions of Cameroon. So I think it's a kind of coordination that is not just at the level of the government, it should be a coordination at the level of humanitarian actors that are on the field. And let me reiterate, the issue of politics is not part and parcel of humanitarian intervention, because some of the government agencies are not aware. We hope that the recent committee that was set up for the coordination of humanitarian activities, they should be aware that when it comes to issues of humanitarian assistance, it's not all about politics.
Right. I mean, a school of thought holding that the government is trying to show the world that it is still in control, because usually when the United Nations comes into a country, it acts as though it is trying to remove anarchy and give new control in the governance of the nation. And because they are autonomous, they tend to dish out instructions that may go different from that of the government. So a school of thought holding that the government is trying to show that it's still in control, while others say the government wants to show to the world that even though the United Nations is carrying out these activities, it falls in line with the government's emergency plan. Do you think the undertone reason could be that the government wants to benefit? I mean, if the word benefit is the best, you think the government wants to benefit in the largesse from the United Nations and perhaps impersonate that it is carrying out these activities?
Mr. Yanick, let's look at international humanitarian law when it comes to humanitarian access. It states that it's the responsibility of every government to protect its people. But when a government fails to protect its people, the United Nations or the international community has a right to intervene for the protection of the civilians. And I think that is what the United Nations is doing at the moment. They are merely helping a situation that was falling apart. The United Nations is not there to prove to the government of Cameroon that they are here to replace the government, or they are here for ulterior motives. They are here to implement international humanitarian law when it comes to humanitarian access. Because when a government fails, that is the job of the United Nations. That is the job of the international community, not just the United Nations. Other partners, donors, they are supposed to intervene. They are supposed to help. If, for example, you don't have you lack food at home, and I give you food, it's not because I'm coming from the United Nations or I'm an international organization. It's because it's my duty as a brother to share with you in times of need. So that is what is happening. So the government should not feel as if most of these organizations, they are out to undermine the duties of the government. I think they are here for collaboration, not just with the government. They are also here to collaborate with all those who are out for the well-being of the people. Because it's not a matter of politics, it's a matter of life, the value of life. Life is precious. Life is something that we cannot compare with any other thing. Without life, you cannot do anything. A lot of kids who are dying in the bushes, we never know what's their future. Most of those kids, maybe they can become presidents tomorrow. Maybe they can become humanitarians. Maybe they can become human rights activists. They have a purpose for life. So we should not look at the issue as a political issue. We should look at the issue as a human rights issue. It's a human rights issue in terms of conflict. That's the way I want the government to look at it. And not just the government. Non-state actors that are also on the field. They should look at the ongoing crisis as a human rights issue. They have to be accountable to their people. Those who are suffering, those who are dying. So I think that is something fundamental. It's a fundamental point of view for all those who are engaged in humanitarian action.
All right. Okay. Now let's come to local NGOs, the non-profits that we have in the northwest and southwest region. It would appear you guys have done very little, especially in suppressing the escalation of the crisis, but most especially in catering of these IDPs, these internally displaced persons. From the look of things, if There are no international NGOs. The local NGOs cannot do anything. Why did it take so long for assistance to start trooping in where we have local NGOs? Why did it take so long?
Mr. Yanick, it's not the duty of a humanitarian organization to solve a political crisis. But I think a lot of humanitarian organizations that are listening to us right now will bear with me that there is a lot of advocacy that is going on at the level of the Northwest and Southwest regions. And I think this advocacy is helping the situation on the ground. And recently, the government of the United Kingdom granted $2.3 million US and pounds, to UNICEF to support the crisis across the Northwest and Southwest regions. This is the benefit of advocacy. So I think the local organizations, the advocacy is going a long way to helping the situation on the ground for those that are suffering, kids most especially, persons with disabilities, pregnant women, to name a few. There are a lot of vulnerable groups on the field. And I think as humanitarian actors, we should continue to stress on advocacy. When it comes to the issue of it's extremely slow to help the people what they are going through.
The speed is very slow.
It's very slow. Most of the local organizations, they don't have the funds. They need the partners in order to make a difference. As you know, humanitarian intervention, humanitarian crisis is something new to the Northwest and Southwest regions. That's why I wish to use this platform to call on governments, not just the government of Cameroon, on governments to always address the root causes of issues before it escalates to humanitarian crisis. Because sometimes during our meetings, I feel like crying. When you imagine your society, everything is falling apart. Sometimes I feel like crying. But if the root causes of the needs, the aspirations of the people is addressed at an early stage, then we could not have come to this stage. There are a lot of governments across Africa, across other continents, that take it for granted when the people are expressing their genuine disagreements. I think it's high time. It's high time for governments to call up for dialogue, to solve crises before they escalate to humanitarian situations whereby we have to be begging. We have to tell like beggars. Cameroon is a nation that is full of resources, that is made up of youths who are resourceful. So coming to this stage of begging for food, begging for shelter, I think this is something we could have avoided. But now we are into the mess, and we have to address this mess as humanitarian actors, as donors, those who are prepared to support. We have to address this issue, especially the issue of livelihood. It's not just about giving you food to eat or providing you with shelter. It's also about giving you means to fish. You don't give somebody fish all the time. You have to give him the means to fish. So we are also looking at strategies whereby we can empower the people to also go there and fish in order to survive. We cannot talk about humanitarian aid all the time, humanitarian assistance every single day. We should talk about how to improve on the climate so that these people can have a means to fish.
All right. Now, journalists, media houses have been carrying out on the ground investigation on the activities of the United Nations. And so far, what we have realized is that the United Nations is not directly involved in the humanitarian assistance process. It would appear all the officials that are coming from the UN agencies for humanitarian assistance do the office work, while they subcontract local NGOs or Cameroonians to do the work while they sit in the office. Is that the clear situation? Is that how it is supposed to be, or it is due to the situation at hand, the everyday conflict that is in? Why are the UN officials they are doing the armchair work, why they bring you, the local NGOs, to carry out the field work?
You have OCHA, that is the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. What it does is it works with both local and international organizations. It works with donors. It works with governments to coordinate humanitarian activities wherever the crisis may be. So it's not like the UN officials are just sitting in their offices.
No, certainly it shows that they're sitting in their offices. I mean, many of the places where these assistance have been given, you barely find in Kumba, where you have the WFP, the World Food Program, donating food. You don't find any UN worker there. In other parts of the southwest region where they are basically located, you only find them in Boya. They are basically in Boya, carrying out office meetings and all of that. You don't find them in the field.
Yes.
So what is the cause of all of this?
The UN agencies, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but from the little I know, is that the UN agencies are responsible for coordination. Coordination, not necessarily. There are sometimes they go on the field, they travel to Bamenda, they travel on the field from time to time, but they work with the organizations that have access. The issue here is the issue of access, because as you know, most of the UN staff, they are not Cameroonians. Most of them are coming from Europe, some of them are coming from Asia, South America. They are not Cameroonians. So they have to work with the local organizations, to address the issue of access. Access is a major issue when it comes to the ongoing crisis, because of the presence of a lot of actors on the field. So you cannot expect the United Nations to be at the forefront when they don't even know the terrain. So they need to work with Njangi groups. They need to work with quarter heads. They need to work with all the actors on the field in order to address these issues. So most of the times, there are coordination meetings, humanitarian coordination meetings, whereby these actors are invited and the UN is leading from behind to ensure that there is proper coordination of the humanitarian work on the field. And there is the humanitarian response plan for 2019 that is being, that was released a couple of, I think a week ago by OCHA. So with this plan, the donors are expected to respond. They are looking forward to about, if you have a copy of that document, it's a public document, about $393 million for intervention next year. So that is the work that OCHA has been doing.
That's something in the range of 618 billion francs.
Yeah, so that is what they have been doing.
Something like 118 billion francs.
Okay. Yes. So that's what they have been doing behind the scenes, to give the international community, the donors, an idea of the extent of the humanitarian crisis across the northwest and southwest regions. So we are looking next year into a lot of fruitful activities for the benefit of the people across the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon.
All right, now let us look about these other things. The United Nations has done a lot so far. We must appreciate them. For 3 months, we see the humanitarian assistance everywhere. I mean, I traveled to as far as Manfe, and I saw that a lot is being done. And that is a problem. The communication is a problem. People may not know that UN is doing anything because they don't communicate to the press. You hardly hear that UN has done something. You only coincidentally meet these things being done in church premises or in well-coordinated places like hospitals. I mean, why is there poor communication? Why is the UN hiding everything that is doing in the northwest and southwest region?
Mr. Yanick, it goes back to the issue of protection. There's a serious protection issue as far as the conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon is concerned. And the UN is not releasing statements on the ongoing crisis, at the national level. They are not releasing because there are a couple of I think some time ago, a statement was released by, I think, was it UNICEF, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, UNICEF.
Yes, and it caused a lot of problems on social media, and it even affected the work of some humanitarian organizations on the field. So the UN is being extremely cautious when it comes to the issue of exposing what they are doing, but I think they are doing a lot behind the scenes.
All right.
They are doing a lot behind the scenes, and as humanitarian organizations, we are the ones to advocate. We are the ones to continue with advocacy for the benefit of those who are suffering.
Right.
Yeah, those who are dying in the bushes, those who are constantly being attacked in their homes, medical personnel, hospitals, schools that are being attacked. That is a no-go area when, according to humanitarian law, international humanitarian law. You are not supposed to attack a hospital. You are not supposed to attack a school. You are not supposed to attack medical personnel during a humanitarian crisis like this. So I think we are the ones to do advocacy for the benefit of the population.
Right. Now, why is it only in the Southwest region? The UN seems to call to rally or narrow its activities only in the Southwest region. The Northwest region seems to be abandoned. I mean, literally nothing seems to be happening with regards to UN's humanitarian assistance. What could be the problem? Why is the UN not present in the Northwest region?
At the beginning of this crisis, there was the Humanitarian Response Plan for 2018 that stated that the crisis was concentrated at the level of the Southwest region of Cameroon. But things have changed. From the statistics at the beginning of the program, you can see a lot of things have changed. A lot of villages are going through a very tough time. A lot of displacements at the level of the Northwest regions at the moment. So the UN is carefully considering a change of strategy from 2019. The recent Humanitarian Response Plan is a 4-year plan from the United Nations, how they can carry out humanitarian intervention at the level of both regions. So they are seriously considering how they can, increase their missions to the Northwest regions in the coming year. So it's because of the change of dynamics and the initial statistics. You all know what happened from at the start.
On social media,
yes, the initial statistics, you had Manu, you had Meme, that were, a lot of displacements. But now the things are changing. You have Bui Division, Boyo, all those areas.
Mezam,
Gokitunja,
Momo, especially
Momo. So you have the dynamics has changed drastically. So the UN is also considering strategies to increase its presence at the level of the Northwest regions as from next year.
Right. Now, we go to this final bit before we wrap up with the program. The government announced the creation for the Commission for the Disarmament, Demobilization, and Reintegration of ex-combatants who picked up arms in the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest region. According to the government, it is a way of ending the humanitarian crisis that is rocking the Northwest and Southwest region. And the process is going to look the ex-combatants disarming themselves and identifying themselves in the nearest government office, where they shall be demobilized and reintegrated through a rehabilitation process that will ensure that they fit back into the society they long lost because of the war. Do you think this commission can end the humanitarian crisis in the 2 English-speaking regions?
Mr. Yanick, as a humanitarian actor, I think I have to stick to the principle of neutrality. There are certain political issues that when it comes to, we are here to discuss on, this is a humanitarian platform today.
Yeah, because the government is saying that it's going to end the humanitarian crisis, and it falls in line with the crisis. Do you think that this process can really end the conflict, which of course will facilitate your work in reintegrating the IDPs back to their place of origin? Do you think this is a good step?
Mr. Yanick, from a personal point of view, I think there is need for a ceasefire from a personal point of view, there is need for a ceasefire across the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. And I think the head of state has the powers to bring this crisis to an end. With a ceasefire, it's going to make it easier for us humanitarian actors to deliver aid. A lot of international organizations, non-governmental organizations, are finding it very difficult to deliver aid because no ceasefire has been called. So we are still in a state of, there is still a lot of conflict going on the field. And the safety and security of humanitarian actors is at stake. We are not exempted from the insecurity that is ongoing at the level of the regions. So safety of humanitarian workers is vital for the delivery of humanitarian aid. The commission, this armament commission, well, I think the objectives to ensure that those who want to be reintegrated into the society, it's a good initiative to reintegrate those who ex-fighters. But I think that is not what we need at the moment. What we need at the moment is a ceasefire. I'm speaking as a humanitarian actor and how difficult it is to deliver aid on the field. We need ceasefire in order to make our work easier, in order for us to help tons of people who are suffering, who are in need, who are dying, mothers, pregnant women, the elderly. They are dying in the bushes. They are buried day in, day out. We are seated here. We don't even know those who have died today across Ikata, across Owe, across small villages. A lot of people are dying and they are buried, and our people are crying. They are crying day in, day out. They are weeping. Our mothers are weeping. There are situations whereby a lot of young men have been killed. They are the ones to dig graves. It's an abomination when it comes to our culture to see what is happening. So we should call for ceasefire. Disarmament the disarmament committee is a good initiative, but I think that is not what will solve.
Bad timing.
Yes, that is not what we need at the moment. If we truly have the people at heart, what we need at the moment is ceasefire.
Right.
We need to bring this to an end. We need to call on dialogue. We need a dialogue table. And the government of Cameroon is supposed to take that lead to call on dialogue.
Right. Okay, now we're wrapping up. Let's talk about the GFDLP, that is your organization. What's the plan of action in terms of the humanitarian assistance? What do you have in your sleeves with regards to the humanitarian assistance, the humanitarian crisis, as the way forward to ending the crisis? What do you have?
A plan of action to end.
Yes, plan of action in respect to your humanitarian assistance.
Yes, okay. With respect to humanitarian assistance, we are having a couple of partners. Some of them have come on board, others are still to come on board, especially to address the issue of protection when it comes to IDPs. A lot of young men are being harassed because of the lack of identification documents. A lot of men, elderly men as well, are being harassed every day. You have a lot of kids who risk becoming stateless because of lack of birth certificates. That is a very, very serious issue that we have some partners who are struggling to address that issue. We also, through our partners, we are looking forward to creating a database to help the public, to give the partners an idea of what are the needs of the people in the area of shelter, in the area of non-food items, in the area of food needs, in the area of transportation for those who are sick. There are a lot of people who are sick and they don't even have the means to go to the hospital, to see how they can have transport allowances to go to the hospital. So those are a series of issues that we want to start addressing at the beginning of the new year 2019. So that is part and parcel of our plan of action for the entire year. Depending on the number of partners we are going to have on board, we are going to do a lot of good for the benefit of the people.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. AKOH Baudouin, that is our program. Thank you for coming. We are very grateful you came in.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Yanick.
And to you, dear televiewers, we place a cap on the point today. We want to thank immensely Mr. AKOH Baudouin, the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Forum for the Defense of the Less Privileged, who made it to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Cameroon. I've been Yanick Fonki for presentation, and special thanks goes to Ngwan Kindness, who was in the broadcasting room. Mr. Eno Humphrey Ayuk took care of the supervision of this program. We meet you next Sunday on another issue on the point. Bye-bye.